Welcome to this video about the care act duties in relation to determination of eligibility. Please note that on the Sky website, we have other videos about this topic and other topics, jointly with a handout that has all the key messages and some reflective questions that will support you embedding the learning in your practice. My name is Carmen, and today with me is Paula. We are both social care practitioners, and in this video, we are going to be talking about the common misunderstandings when determining eligibility.
Thank you, Carmen. So both Carmen and I have significant experience of delivering training in relation to this particular process under the Care Act. And so these key misunderstandings have come from Carmen and I reflecting on these areas and us just wanting to make sure that we are getting these messages across. So as you'll remember, the first criteria for determining eligibility is that the individual's needs arise from an impairment or a physical or mental impairment, disability or illness. So we know that when we're looking at that first criteria that we don't have to have a diagnosis from a professional such as a doctor or a consultant to indicate that there is a need. However, what we find when we're looking at determinations of eligibility is that some social care practitioners will use the diagnosis as a clear indicator that the individual does have eligible needs. So, for example, an individual that is living with type 1 diabetes, that's managed well with medication, that's managed well with a diet and exercise. So actually, that doesn't mean that the individual does have eligible needs. So it's really important that if we are working with individuals where there is a diagnosis, that we are looking at how that diagnosis means, or the needs that are arising as a result of that diagnosis, how they are unable to achieve 2 or more of the specified outcomes, and how it is having a significant impact on that individual's well-being.
Thank you, Paula. Yes, what it comes down to really is about following the exact phrasing on the regulations when determining eligibility, rather than just summarizing the 3 criteria in one given question, isn't it? But yeah, we do find that. I mean, the other thing that we have found in many occasions is how people determine eligibility as part of the assessment, or we even have heard the phrasing of assessing eligibility. Yeah, and how those 2 things come together. So we have, because on the Community Care Act, the previous legislation, we did assess needs against the eligibility criteria, what was the facts, risks scale. Yeah, now what people do is they do determine eligibility as part of the assessment. And just to clarify here, we're not saying that the determination of eligibility can't be part of the assessment form, okay? It could be one form. I mean, ideally, it should be at the end of it, yeah? But it could be one form. That's not a problem at all. That's perfectly compliant. But the assessment process will be around the 9 areas of well-being, not around eligibility outcomes. And then the determination of eligibility happens when the assessment is completed, whether it's assessment of needs or carers assessment. And completed means that we have a clear picture in our head about what the individual's needs are around the 9 areas of well-being and what the individual's priorities or personal outcomes are around the 9 areas of well-being.
Yeah, absolutely. So it is really important that we get it into our heads that it is not an assessment of eligibility, but a determination of eligibility based on the assessed needs. Okay. And what we also need to remember is that while the Care Act tells us that the assessment process and the care and the support plan process should be, wherever possible, led by the individual, it is really clear that the determination of eligibility is led by the local authority, the social care practitioner. Now, that doesn't mean that we won't consult with and we won't have a conversation and, share with the individual so that we can be making sure that we're understanding how they're unable to achieve and the impact that it's having on their well-being. But it is the social care practitioner's evidence alongside the criteria as given to us by the Care Act guidance and regulation that will enable us to determine whether or not that individual does have eligible needs.
Yes, that's another one that is very important. The same way that a lot of people confuse eligibility outcomes with eligible outcomes, isn't it? There aren't eligible outcomes. Outcomes are not eligible. What the Care Act tells us is that we have to have regards to the personal outcomes when we are meeting eligible needs. Yeah. So we have personal outcomes that are the what does good look like from the point of view of the individual adult carer. We have eligibility outcomes, what are used when we are determining eligibility. And then we have, when we're doing the care and support plan, to have consideration to those personal outcomes we capture in the assessment to see how are we meeting the eligible needs, the needs that we have determined are eligible throughout the eligibility determination.
Yeah, absolutely. And also we find that people are social care practitioners might still consider that when we're determining if somebody has eligible needs, that then we are looking at services that can be provided to that individual to enable those needs to be met. But it's not that, we're not looking at eligibility for services, but we're looking at those needs that might be eligible for care and support. So we're determining whether those assessed needs are eligible needs. And care and support is far, far broader than services. Your traditional services. Care and support can be the provision of information and advice. It can be, the preventative intervention that we might deemed to be suitable to support that individual to achieve that outcome. So even if we do assess that an individual does have eligible needs, it doesn't necessarily mean that those needs are going to receive a service as funded by a personal budget, for example.
And that links with another thing that is really important, isn't it? Which is the eligibility determination has to be what is called carer blind,
Yeah.
Which is basically if there is a carer supporting the individual, an unpaid carer, an informal carer, when determining eligibility, we need to look at the situation like if the carer were not there. And then the person will have or may have eligible needs, even if they are met by the carer. So when we move on to the support plan, again, we're not looking at eligible for services, we're looking at eligible for care and support. And if that care and support is provided by the unpaid carer, the needs will be met. So it is really important to ensure that even if all the eligible needs are met by a carer, we acknowledge and define them as eligible needs, because we shouldn't take into account the support provided by the carer when we are determining eligible needs. So these are some of the common misunderstandings that we have come across numerous times in our professional experience, as you say, Paula. From our point of view, the key way to avoid these misunderstandings is, number one, be fully familiar with the content of the Care Act, its regulations and the guidance. So when determining eligibility, if possible, have the phrasing from the regulations in front of you, have exactly what it says that is able or unable to achieve for each of the carer or the adult, what the 3 questions are. Don't rephrase the questions. Respond exactly what the law tells you have to respond to. And the other key area is ensure you have evidence to substantiate your decisions. The CARE Act is clear that we need to evidence the determination of eligibility decision-making process. That means that, as you said before, Paula, saying yes, no is not enough. Yeah, we need to say yes, able to achieve, or yes or no, unable to achieve, what outcome and under what circumstances. Or if we say yes, significant impact on the well-being, we need to be able to say in which areas of the well-being and how or have we come to the conclusion that there is a significant impact. And that evidence will be, as you explore with June in the video assessment of needs, part of the assessment process, all that gathering information. Is there anything else you want to add, Paula?
No, thank you.
So thank you very much to the listeners. This is the 4th video on determination of eligibility that covers all the areas that the CARE Act covers. And thank you very much for listening.